Okay.
just now. So, hello everyone. Welcome to the live with Tamika Thompson. It's going to take me a moment to get everything set up, so bear with us here while I get it shared to Books of Horror. This is the only awkwardness for doing these sort of lives, but
It's like
it's
a
not.
meditation period. It's completely fine. We just have some time to take some deep breaths.
Luckily, it's not playing through my phone like the sound usually is on autoplay, so it starts playing when I'm trying to share it to the group, and then it, it's like a feedback loop. It's fun. It's fun. So, like I was telling you just before we started, the comments, they're actually, we have a comment, so if you can see that. Oh,
Allie
yep.
Jane Sweet.
Allie Jane Sweet,
I felt the share.
our resident Canadian.
Hello, Allie. Am I saying that right? Hello, Allie Jane Sweet.
All right. So, I think I have everything set up now. Um, I will hand it over to you. Would you please introduce yourself and tell the folks what you're all about?
My name is Tamika Thompson. I am a horror and suspense author. My background is in journalism and production, and I made the switch over a decade ago to writing full time. And I have three books that are out right now. The first is an anthology. I was the co-editor of that anthology. It's called Graffiti, and it was put out by a small press here in the Bay Area called Ant Loot, and it's multi-genre. It was for people of color, for us to write outside of the white gaze, to focus on writing stories and poetry and essays that were not related to our marginalization. And it won a Forward Indies Book Award, so we were really excited about that. In 2022, I started to work with Madness Heart Press, which is a small horror press, which you probably have heard of. They do some extreme work, but they also published my novella, Salamander Justice, which is a creature feature. And in 2023, Eddie Generous at Unnerving Books picked up my short story collection, Unshod, Cackling, and Naked, which brings together 13 of my short tales. Many of them have been previously published, but there were some that were in there that were original to the collection. And that won a Next Generation Indie Book Award for horror in 2024. So I was really excited about that. I didn't expect all of the love and the buzz and the attention that the book got. It's a coming of rage story. There's a lot of feminist rage and a lot of characters rising up against systems that oppress them, and it connected with a lot of readers. So I was happy about that. And next spring, I have my debut novel coming out from Erewhon, which is an imprint of Kensington Books, and it's called The Curse of Hester Gardens. And it is speculative, but it's also looking at an important social issue that's important to me and grew out of some of my research back when I was a journalist. So that's where I am. I live in the Bay Area. I have my own blog, my own newsletter called Tamika Talks Terror.
Is there
And
any is there anything you can tell us about your upcoming novel release? Like maybe like just a synopsis or something to get people interested?
yes, it's a story that is set in a public housing project, and it follows the story of one woman in her family. She has lost her oldest son to gun violence, and her husband is in prison, and she begins to experience some hauntings in her home, and begins to believe over the course of the book that her remaining sons are in danger, not only from gun violence and the high crime neighborhood that they live in, but also from this curse that she believes she had a hand in creating. And so it's she's dealing with two different things, right? She's dealing with her environment and how horrific that can be, but then she's also dealing with the speculative elements within the story.
Yep. That sounds pretty awesome.
Thank you.
So people will need to put that on their radar for next year
Yes,
from
in March.
Kensington.
Yes, in March, The Curse of Hester Gardens. And then I'm also working on another untitled novel for release in the fall of 2027, which will be a bit of a departure from the first one. It's not going to be dealing with that same sort of heavy social issue, but it will be dealing with some important topics as well. I think that's sort of how I see the trajectory of my career, really, is that I have taken a lot of bits and pieces that I picked up from research or from work when I was working as a journalist, and I've put it into the horror writing. And I always say, whenever I talk to people about that sort of transition, that so much of the daily news is horror, really, which is why
Way worse, a lot of the times way worse.
it is. It is. Um, so I tend to read the news and not watch it on television, just because it's so visceral when you see a lot of it. So
That was going to be one of my questions after hearing your introduction. How was it switching for you? How was it switching from journalism to writing prose? It sounds like you just said. It sounds like you had a good foundation to start from with, especially with writing horror. But how was it switching from basically reporting or nonfiction to going into prose for you?
I think it was the writing part was actually pretty seamless. A lot of the skill set that I picked up from learning to write for journalism, I still use in my writing. I tend to write in a way that I want it to reach a lot of people. So I typically am not going to have a lot of flowery prose. It's pretty staccato and direct and to the point, very similar to journalism writing. I also was a broadcast journalism journalist, so a lot of the journalism that I was working on was for the ear. It was writing to sound, and not for print
Right.
journalism, which I think makes a big difference in the sentence structure and the movement of the sentence, and verb choice, and what when you put together a sentence, what is the most important feature of it. And I think that is a little different for broadcast journalists than it is for print. And so I think you can kind of hear some of that, particularly in the dialogue in my writing. It tends to sound like you're listening to a film or a stage play. Um, Even before journalism, though, I had a performance background because I had been doing some acting and some modeling from when I was young. And my mother had put me into some pageants, which one of the stories in the collection is about a beauty queen. And I think all of those things kind of contributed as well. Just the idea that the writing needed to be engaging on a few levels, not just plot wise, but also people could be connected to the characters, but connected to the ideas as well. I'm a big ideas person with my writing. From the transition, though, a lot of it had to do with just setting up a writing practice. I took time in the beginning to do that, to carve out time and physical space for writing. And I think it's so important for writers to do that at the beginning of their career and to kind of stick with it, because it's not, the inspiration is not going to always just kind of fall out of the sky. I think a lot of people think that it's a very like ethereal process that you're going through every day. And it really isn't. A lot of it
Yeah.
is just sitting down and dedicating yourself to doing the work, at the time that you set aside. So that helped a lot.
Yeah. You get your ritual, but like you said, you wanted to establish your foundation, like,
Yeah.
and then go from there. And also when sounds like from when you approach your writing, relatability is important to you. So
I think so, because when I was working as a journalist, so much of the goal that I had from the beginning, before I even went to journalism school, was that I wanted to write for the people that I grew up around. And the people that I grew up around and the people who were in my family were not in an ivory tower. They were people who, worked in factories, who rode the bus, who drove the bus, school teachers, and um, city workers who picked up the garbage, each week.
blue
And
blue collar.
yes, very much a working class union town. My dad was a union worker. I remember when the local newspaper there went on strike, we would put signs out front on the lawns that said no scab papers, and we would cancel all of the subscriptions.
Yeah,
So those are the people that I'm writing for. I'm writing for everyone, obviously, but when I went into journalism, and even now with my writing, I want my work to be able to be handed to anyone, and for anyone or everyone to be able to engage with it and find themselves in it, and question things that they had held as truths, and to rethink some things. Um, and so that's sort of what I've carried over with me into my work even today.
that's that's. I mean, I think most writers are going to do that. Put a little bit of themselves into the work. And when you go to write, what are you drawing from aside from the experiences that you've lived? So there's that old expression, bleeding on the page. So everybody puts a little bit of themselves into every single story that they do. So
Yes.
that's awesome. So
And
you're drawing, yeah.
every character too. Like I can, like, even the really awful characters, like, but I can still find a piece of myself in them.
Um, that too, yeah. Like you might not be so much relatable to a villain, but you might pull a villain from your mind that would be the exact opposite of you, and that's still, a reflection of you, because you would think when you're writing, these aren't the things that I would do, so to make this person nasty, this is what they would do. So in that, yeah, the villain can be a reflection of the writer. So
Yes. Yes, very much so. I hadn't thought of it that way, but that's a really good point you make.
yeah. We've gotten some comments. We got Zach Cass.
Sorry,
I
I'm
hope.
missing it. Hi,
Yeah,
Zach.
we got Zach Cass, and he says, if you haven't, I'll pull it up here. If you haven't read any of Tamika's work, you're taking away from yourself. Which, I think after this live, a lot more people are going to be seeking out your work, especially the collection uh, Unshod, Cackling, and Naked, because there has been a lot of readers seeking out the feminist rage type stories. So
I do
um,
want to mention, because Zach is on here. So you can also find one of my short stories in Error Code, which is an anthology that just came out, and also the best of Carnage House. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Carnage House. I love Carnage House. Because I do some extreme work, but I do kind of like extreme, but like I don't know, would it be cozy extreme or extreme light? So I sent some work into Carnage House, and they put it not only on their site, but then they put it in their best of collection. So Error Code is so cool. You should definitely check that out. That's available out now in the Best of Carnage House. So I have some short pieces in those too.
I have seen the cover for that. I love the cover for Error Code.
It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah, I
Yes.
love that cover.
Um, that's an interesting question you brought up. Um, extreme light or splatterpunk light or
I don't
have
know
you,
what to call it. I feel like somewhere Wrath James White is going, what? Um, but like I feel like it's tapping into something that is really tender in the character, and maybe all of it does this, and I'm just approaching it from this way. But I feel like it's tapping into something really tender in the character, and when you're reading it, you may not even realize that it's about to become extreme, but then it just like goes sideways or really bananas.
yeah.
And so I think I think the beginning of some of my extreme work may not appeal to typical extreme or splatterpunk readers. I think that was kind of what I was what I was getting at there.
Uh, yeah, subgenre of a subgenre. But
Right, right, right.
um, so you like to maybe dance around that subgenre, like dip your toe in, and then um test the water, but it's not going to be your full blown extreme horror that you're used to seeing from the other people like Wrath James White or um, Aaron Beauregard or people like that. So it's not going to
Exactly.
be to that extent.
Exactly. And if you read the collection, if you read my story collection, there's a range of stories and a range of types of stories. I wouldn't say that I write any one thing in particular. I do write across, like, I love slashers, but I also love social horror. Like, I love, like, for movies, I love the Babadook, but then I also love, Halloween. And so I think that kind of comes out in the work. I have respect for all of it. I love it all. Like, I really loved Womb, and I found Womb by joining Books of Horror. I don't think I would have found it any other way, but I really connected with the work.
Yeah.
And I have a copy here, and I tell my kids, I'm like, don't ever read this book. um, but I just love it all. And so because of that, I think bits and pieces of it show up. So it's kind of hard sometimes when I've written something to think like, oh, so where should this go? So that's why I was so grateful to Carnage House that they really took the time and put my work out there. So I was happy.
Yeah. Oftentimes, as the writer, because I feel like you're so close to the project, you can't see, the forest for the trees. So when somebody asks you what it's about or what category, when you're trying to figure out what category it falls in, if you're trying to pitch it even, um, it's very hard for you to pick it apart like that and to narrow it down for yourself because you wrote the thing and you're like, well, it's just this one, you know, big story. Like I can't categorize it, but um, sometimes I will have like an early reader or something. I'll be like, "What do you think it is?"
What do you think it is? No, I
Yeah.
know. I know. I have this workshop that I teach. I just taught it this weekend virtually. It's called Art of the Query, and it's a 2.5 hour workshop where I go over a PowerPoint presentation. And for aspiring or early career writers, I kind of talk to them about the business side, which I didn't have in the beginning. You can find craft workshops everywhere, but you have to do a little more work to find people who are going to tell you how to take off that writer, author, craft hat and put on the marketing, publishing, submission, business hat. And so much of what we do in that workshop is figuring out, when you have a manuscript that is a novel length, where it fits on the shelf. because it's not a natural thing. Like, because when you're writing, you're just writing, you're just there in your world that you've created with your characters. So then you have to take a step back and think, where would this live on the shelf? What are the comp titles? Which readers would this connect with? What do I have? What did I just make?
Yeah.
uh, and so, but it's such a necessary part of the process, because that's what separates the writers from the authors, right?
Yeah.
Like, you can write all day, but if you don't give it to someone to publish it and go through that submission, it's called submission for a reason, right? You're submitting. you're
Yeah.
just you're submitting the work, but you're submitting to the process. It's such an important piece, and I feel like a lot of times people will have brilliant things that they've written that are just kind of there, because they haven't had the opportunity to really sit with the work and figure out that marketing piece. And so we do it on a smaller scale with our short stories, but then there's the bigger pieces with our novels or our collections, that we do have to sit with the work for a bit.
Yeah. Um, with the workshops you do like that, is that an in-person thing or is it an online thing that people can find?
I do both. I have done it in person in a bookstore, but I offer it virtually, and I'm also going to start offering one-to-one virtual coaching sessions on the same thing, because I find that some people want to come, but they're a little nervous about being in it with other writers, which it never occurred to me until I started like running them. So I do it virtually so that it's accessible to everyone. And I also offer fee waivers, because I wouldn't want someone's inability to pay for the workshop to stand in the way of them getting the knowledge. And so yeah, so I did that this weekend, and it was a lot of fun. It was an intimate group. I turned some people away just because I thought that they weren't far enough along in their manuscript for the workshop to really be useful.
Yeah.
But I think it was useful for the people who came. I know one of them, I honestly think she's going to be hitting send on some submissions this week. So I'm going to be checking back in with her to see how that goes. But it really is the workshop that I wish that I could have had like in the beginning, because I had to make a lot of mistakes and figure everything out on my own.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think regardless, you can help people along as much as you want, but they're going to have to learn by making those mistakes themselves to not do that in the future. It's pretty much inevitable,
Yes.
but you can give them, a solid footing for
Yes.
where to begin, point them in the right directions, and even then, you you're just going to stumble because it's the nature of the game, you know.
Yes. Yes.
But I did want to go back a little bit and talk about you released a collection first.
Hmm.
So was that on purpose or because you say you have a novel coming out next year? Is that on purpose? Because for me, and one thing that readers ask a lot, and my answer is always the same. If you want to have a good understanding of a especially new to you author, you should ask those authors if they have a short story collection because you're going to get the best range and basically a sample of their writing style and see if you vibe with it. So that's why I asked, was it on purpose that you released a short story collection first, or is that just how the cards fell?
That was how the cards fell for me. I had an editor reach out that I had worked on a short he had published a short story of mine, and he reached out to me and to a bunch of other authors to say that he was starting his own press, and did we have any book length works, particularly a collection, because he was looking for a collection. And I had a number of works published already, but it had not really occurred to me to do a collection. And then I thought to myself, oh, I wonder if I can collect. I wonder if I could collect my work. I hadn't thought about, because I was working on the novel already at
Yeah.
the time. And so I looked at what I had, and what had been published and what I had that was still to be released that I had not sent out yet, that I was still working on. And I realized that there was a through line, that there was this idea of transgression, that the characters, whether they were, dogs, or women who had dealt with sexism, or just any other marginalized person, they were rising up against something, or they were pushing back against something, or they were realizing what had been done to them, or the systems, or the pressures that were on them. And once I got that, what is the jacket copy, or that theme, I sent it to him and he wanted to publish it. The thing is that we didn't come to terms, agree, a contract terms. We didn't agree on the terms. And I think my background in performance and journalism has made me a real stickler for contracts. And so I've always been willing to walk away. So I walked away, and I was pretty sad about it, because I was like, oh, I got this whole thing now. I could have,
Yeah.
So I started researching where to send it, and found some indie publishers that I thought might be interested, and really was hoping that Eddie Generous would look at it, because I thought that his publishing house would be a good fit for it, and it ended up working out. So if it had not have been for that editor reaching out, I don't think I would have done it in that order. I think I probably would have thought about it later,
Yeah.
after, shopping the novel around and finding an agent and going through that process, probably at some point. But I'm glad it worked this way. I think the universe had a plan for me.
Man, things like that do happen, and work out in weird ways. But yeah, um, I'm happy to see the book out, so I will be picking up a copy. This kind of comes at the end of the live, but since we're here in the middle of it, um, do you have a website or something for people to get signed copies from you?
Oh, signed copies.
Because people want your signature on the book that they purchase usually.
I have book plates. So I signed copies. I typically haven't done those. I did those during the pre-order, but I have a newsletter. So I think if people sign up, if they come to my website and sign up for the newsletter, in the next one, I will have a process for that, to get
Okay.
people signed copies. Um,
We
that
can we
Yeah, go
we
ahead.
can give you an idea. There's a storefront that you can use. It's called Big Cartel. It's almost as simple as using this live StreamYard. Like I said, was super simple. So if you wanted to create your own storefront, that would be the place that I would point you at. Would be a Big Cartel.
Okay, I love that
And
name.
and I, and I think it integrates. If you have a website already, you can integrate it into your website and stuff. But you have a newsletter, and I think it would integrate good with that. But um, yeah, we'll reiterate all this at the end. But I think people are going to want signed copies of your collection, and then in the future, when you do release your novel for next year, and then the one you have coming out the year after that, um, people are going to want to follow you
Really?
because
Oh, that's exciting. I love it. I will be at StokerCon. I have plans to go to KillerCon this year. StokerCon is in Stamford, Connecticut. I'll be on a panel there. KillerCon is in Austin in, I want to say, August. Um, and so I will be, out and about as well, if anyone wants to come and say hello. I have gone to events before, and members of Books of Horror have come and said hello, and we've taken pictures together, and it's been great,
that's
because we
awesome.
kind of squeal and be all excited about Books of Horror.
Yep, that's awesome. You're hitting all my questions without actually we're hitting them organically.
Oh, okay, great.
But I will try to cipher through them. Um, and also when if people have questions in the comments,
Oh,
please drop
right.
them.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh, I'm so behind on your comments, everyone. I'm sorry. I'm going through it.
well, my this is a fun question, and we have kind of touched on it or danced around it a little bit. But is there any advice that you received in the beginning of your writing career that helped you? And then is there a separate piece of advice that you would like to um, give to others as they start?
Yes, the advice that I was given is the advice that I think everyone should listen to because it came from Tanana Reeve Dew. I was fortunate enough to be able to be in a workshop with her on Black horror writing. And one of the pieces of advice that she gave us was for authors who were starting out and were getting their footing to start with short stories. That's always her advice because you are learning when you work on short stories, you're learning your craft, but you're also learning the business side because you need to get your short stories out. So you learn who the editors are, what are the important presses, who are the movers and the shakers, what other authors should you be reading. It gives you time to establish your writing practice, but it also gives you time to build the career. And I think it was the best advice. I was already writing short stories before I went to her workshop, but most of us did have larger projects that we took to her workshop. And so I think her telling us to also stay focused on the short work was really important. And if you've read her long work, I would say her long work is obviously amazing, but her short work is as well. I really love The Wishing Pool. Um, and then she has the other one that was the Ghost Summer was the other collection that she had that I love both of those. And
Okay.
so I think when you read her short work, you see that she really, when she says it, she really means it. The advice that I give to other people is to focus on perseverance. You really do have to persevere if your goal is to be a published author. You have to persevere for the characters and for the stories that are coming through you to make it out into the world. Those stories can only be told by you. That's why they're coming through you. And
Yeah.
so you have to persevere for those. But then you also have to persevere beyond just publication because you have to promote the work, right? You have to get out there and talk to people and meet people. And so I talk to a lot of authors who are very excited to write and to work on the writing and to get it published. And then they kind of want to go back to writing again and they don't
Yeah.
as much enjoy the marketing. And I'm not that way. I think because I have a performance background, I love that aspect. I love being out and talking to people. I like this. I love this. I love being out at conventions and talking to people and interacting with them around the work. And one of the first things I do when I'm out is I want to know what are people reading? Who do they love? Like, are they writing? What are you working on? What stage are you at in your career? Like, all of
Yeah.
those things. And so I think that that's a really important piece for authors, even established ones, is that you still have to persevere for the work. If you don't put in the time to market and promote, I mean, unless you're Stephen King, um,
Yeah.
it's just not going to, it may not connect with readers in the same way, especially for indie, because I very much have seen myself as an indie author, and we have to work hard on the marketing piece. We can't just hand it over to the publisher and think we're going to go back to, drafting the next thing.
Yeah. Um, I don't know what percentage you would break it down to, but writing is at the at the line half the job for authors. So the actual uh, act of writing, and then yes, you have to get into the promotion and the marketing, and then not only that, it depends on how where you are with your career or how you are approaching your writing. So if you are going to self-publish, you're going to be wearing a lot more hats than if you were querying for um, indie house or something for a publisher.
Yeah, my hat is always off to people who self-publish. Like, I wouldn't even know where to begin. I really wouldn't. And I see them and they go out and they have these like amazing books and they like make a splash and there's like all this buzz. I'm like, how did they do that?
Yeah,
I think they're just on another level. Like, I don't even know. I don't even know. I just think that they are like, they get so much, they should receive so much praise for it. When you see it in the music industry, when you see people going out and they're like indie music authors, I feel like they get so much respect and it's not really treated the same way in publishing and in book publishing. And I think that it should be. I think
it
that they are
should.
just doing amazing work.
I think there's a lot more saturation in indie publishing nowadays. I would say especially in the last 5 years. So I think that's where a lot of the problem comes from. But it's become so accessible to people, you can't not help but notice it. So it's all about how those authors go about their marketing strategy. And like you said, if they could make a big splash in the beginning, that's just going to benefit them and get more eyes on their work. And also, anybody else, people will try and mimic it after, but it's
Right.
not going to have the
Right.
same effect. So you should try and think outside the box when you go about those things. If you are going the more self-published route, as
Yes.
opposed to a press or something.
Yes.
I want to take it back real quick
Hmm.
to okay. You said Tananarive, and I've
Yes.
heard Tananarive. So is there? How does she prefer it?
How does she pronounce her name? Tananarive. And I'm actually I'm partially deaf in one ear. So I am disabled, but and I wear a hearing aid. And so for the longest time, I couldn't say her name the right way. I would notice other people would say it, and I'd
Yeah.
be like, oh, I don't know if they're saying it the right way. So I had to like kind of train myself because I think I used to, I don't know how I used to pronounce it, but I used to say it wrong. And so recently I've had to, but that's how I've heard her say it as Tananarive. Uh,
Tananarive, dude. She is a new to me author this year, and
oh,
um,
really? What did you
she,
read? Was it the Reformatory?
of course, it was a reformatory,
Yes.
and it's a longer work, like you said, but I've tried to distill it down myself as a reader. Like I'm having trouble expressing my emotions with that book because it's definitely from chapter one, but almost page one. She builds a sense of dread
Yes.
that absolutely builds and builds and builds throughout the entire book. It's an underlining dread that's always there, always present.
Yes.
Um,
And you, as the reader, feel as if you are in peril the entire story.
you're kind of like
Yeah.
circling back and just watching and hoping and always hoping and I won't say how it ends, but
Right. Right. But you
thank
know
you
what?
for
I
that
will
ending.
say if you are just getting to know her work, I would say go back and read her debut, The Between.
The
I
between.
love that book. I love that book.
Okay.
She just turns everything on its head in that book. I would also read her now that everyone has seen Sinners and everyone is, all abuzz about Sinners. She has an entire African Immortals series. I believe it's 4 books. That is amazing. Just basically anything. The Good House. She's just got so much. So
She's the
if
yeah.
you're starting with the reformatory, you're starting in a great place. But I would definitely go back and read a lot of her other work. It's just every time I finish something of hers, I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
this is so amazing.
After hearing what you said, with her workshop and stuff, I'm going to definitely be looking into her short story stuff to see
Yes,
how that goes. But the in between, I will be looking up too. But she she's a natural storyteller. Like just her voice in writing, just from what I've read in the reformatory, and I did it on audio,
audiobook.
but
Okay.
the narrator was absolutely perfect for it that she picked, and but you know at the base of it, it's her words and her storytelling is amazing. So,
Yes, yes. And she started off as a journalist as well.
but
I think you might be hearing some of that in her practice. I see
yeah,
there's a question. Do you prefer writing short stories or longer work? I have to be honest. I think my heart is with short stories, just because when I work on them, I feel like from the beginning, I already have the whole thing envisioned in my head. And so I'm just kind of channeling it onto the page. And that process occurs in a tidier, shorter sort of timeline than it does for a novel. A novel can feel very unwieldy, like you've, especially in the revision portion of a novel. I love revising short stories. I enjoy revising novels, but there is a certain stress that comes with revising a novel just because it is so large.
yeah,
Because when you change one thing, you break the whole thing in a lot of ways, right?
yeah,
So you got to go back. You have to really be familiar with your material, and you constantly have to go back and make sure that everything, all of the parts are working together. And so they are both extremely satisfying when I get to the close. I won't say the end because it never really ends, but when I get to the close of the manuscript, I am equally satisfied. But I feel like it's more natural for me to write as a short story writer than it is for me to write as. But I think that's because I separate drafting and revision. I compartmentalize them in a way that other writers may not. So when
yeah.
I draft, when I'm working on a first draft, I do not go back, I only go forward. And so I'm just kind of getting all of the pain and all of the story, everything onto the page. And then I have this manuscript, and then I take that hat off and I put on a different revision hat. I'm an editor then. And so when I go back, I'm it's a different process for me. I cannot edit when I draft because I would never finish
That
anything.
that's been um, advice from others, and my advice to a lot of up and coming authors is to persevere, get through the draft, whatever whatever length of story you're working on, because if it's not written, you don't have anything.
Right, exactly.
So
Exactly. You can't write, you can't revise a blank page. So
don't get mired down in what you think might be holding back the story a few pages back because it's a rough draft. It's going to be rough. So
yes.
get through the story, and then you can usually, hopefully, take a break, maybe like a few days, a week, separate yourself from it, and then approach it back because I think the story will benefit more coming in with fresh eyes.
Yes. Yes. Because you're still, I feel like if you come back too soon, you're still the writer.
Yeah,
You have
yeah,
to be away from it to come back as the editor.
yeah. So, yes, you, if above anything else, write the story
Yes.
because without it, you have nothing.
Right.
I
Exactly.
agree. Um, one of my questions that I normally do ask, since we're on this topic, is: are you a plotter or a pantser, or are you a hybrid of both?
I'm definitely a hybrid.
I think that's been the answer for a lot of folks.
Yeah, I started off the first novel that I wrote was for NaNoWriMo in November. And that was, I want to say like November of 2011 or something like that. And I still remember that process because I actually took a NaNoWriMo. It was like a write a novel in a month class at UCLA Extension Writers Program, which is where I got my certificate. And the instructor who was kind of overseeing our writing of that novel in a month told us to take our inner editor and to put that inner editor away and just draft. That's why I am this way. And so I just got it all out there, and then I went and started to outline after. So that's where the the actual plotting comes in for me is when I know the characters and I know the landscape, I know the setting. I generally know where the story ends,
Yeah.
which is so important for me because I don't really have a story unless I know where it ends. I don't understand how these people are like, oh, I wrote the story, but I don't have an ending. That is not my like I sometimes have even started at the final scene and worked my way back. And so that's where my outlining comes in. Is after I really know the material and I know where it's going and I know who's in it and what they have to say and what the story is trying to say, the aboutness of it, then I can go back and put together my outline and work from there in the
Yes.
revision.
Um, okay. So that let me pick your brain on this. I know a few people that are scene writers, and then they will connect the dots. That sounds like madness to me. I because it's me and my writing. I'm a linear writer. Like you,
Okay.
writing the end works, but when I start a story, I have to follow the road all the way down. But I can't go to this gas station or go to that
Mhm.
store and then find the road in between them. But
Okay. So you
you,
outline from the beginning?
I don't outline at all.
Oh, at all. Okay.
I'm a pantser, but I'm a hybrid because I have plot points that I want to reach throughout the story, but they're usually in my mind and I never write them down unless it's like the initial seed of a story,
Mhm.
the idea that is the story and what it's going to come from. But I don't write them down. I keep them in my thoughts, and that way they can shape and form around what I'm working on. That's why I don't hard outline anything.
Okay.
So I consider myself a hybrid too in that way because I have the plot points in my head that I want to reach as I write the story, but um, I don't have any kind of rigid structure that I'm following to get the story written.
Yeah, not in the drafting. I don't, I think I'm a scene to scene person in the drafting as well. I use Scrivener and I start with the premise or what, whatever it is that I have in the beginning. If it's the end, then obviously I have to work back.
Yeah,
But if I'm really starting at the beginning, I kind of let the characters take the story and go with it because as I'm writing, I may go into my writing day, during for my writing practice that day, I may go into it thinking that I'm going to do something
yeah,
with the character, and the character is actually telling me, no, that's not what we're doing, especially in dialogue.
yeah,
Dialogue and action are so important to me. And sometimes I think I know a character until I really get into the scene at the scene level. And that character may go in a different direction than what I thought, which is why I don't do my outlines and my sort of plot points until after I have that first draft. And a
yeah,
lot of that first draft usually makes it into the final draft. It's not like I'm just throwing everything out in the revision. I'm just kind of bringing shape to what's already there and discovering what I have.
yeah. Uh, almost like a refining process.
Yes, yes. Because
Um,
sometimes you don't really realize why something is in there. That's happening right now with my novel as it's in development with the editor at the publishing house. There are symbols that have been there throughout all of the drafts, from the very first draft and all of the revisions. And it's only now that those symbols are really coming to life and connecting with all of the other pieces of the story on this current, revision that I'm working on. So sometimes you just got to keep,
yeah,
chipping away at it to figure out what you made.
yeah. It's all yeah. It's like working a puzzle. You seeing where
Yes.
the pieces fit with one another, and at the end of it, you have a beautiful picture.
Yes. Well,
Um, hopefully, yes, hopefully, hopefully, yeah, it doesn't fall apart and you throw it against the wall and you're like, man, Um, you made me think of something that I was talking about the what was you just discussing? Because I had a thought on that. The
Symbols,
revision
symbols in the
symbols,
novel, revision,
revision,
drafting plot points, outlining Scrivener.
outline Scrivener. Well, yes. I use Google Docs, but I know of Scrivener and what you can do with it, and I think it has like the corkboard feature and stuff.
Yeah, it does. I don't really use the corkboard. I think the thing for me that helps with Scrivener is that I can just move things around.
Yeah,
Especially when I get to that like outlining after I have the draft. And then I can also keep everything in one place. So like images, like I usually cast my novels. So like I'll go out and get celebrities that I think look like the character and I'll actually pull their photos into the document so that as I'm writing, I'm kind of looking at them.
yeah,
All of my research, everything just kind of goes into the same. And so then I don't have to like open up different files on my computer. I just open up that one manuscript project and it has everything in there. And I use it for my short stories too. I love using it for my short stories because I like for my stories to be very like circular. So like things that are in the beginning, they are the same thing at the end. And it's
yeah.
for me, just the way my brain works, is easier for me to do that in Scrivener.
Yeah, with like a callback and stuff to things that you set up in the beginning, and also as you write a story, you might want to go back and add in a setup for what's later in the beginning and stuff like that. Yes,
Yes. Yes.
but I just use plain old Google Docs. But
Mhm.
I start like it's been about 4 years or so that I developed a thing that I do is where I'm at on the manuscript. One page down from that, I have a key or a glossary that I use for all the characters, places, and
Oh,
any type of information that I need to refer back to throughout the story. I have it one page down from where my actual writing is taking place. And
okay.
I started doing that just so I can it's almost like a feature of Scrivener because I have tinkered around with it, but I it didn't work for my flow process
Okay.
in writing Scrivener. So I just developed that myself. I don't know if that's ever helpful for other authors or something, but
Well,
you
that's the
can use
thing.
the key, you
I
know?
I tell everyone when I do for the workshop, I say to them in the beginning that it's specific to that's so much of being the author, right? You're like the CEO of your own small business. And so
Yeah,
you have to figure out what works for you. And so like I can tell people my process, but that's just that process is for my brain because that's how my brain works, but I think each person has to come up with their own process. Like that Google Doc process that you're using sounds like it works. It would drive me nuts.
yeah.
It really would. I'd be like, oh my God, like, where's I need the picture of the alley, you
Eh,
know? Yeah.
That's why I think I developed it, especially with locations, like if or a big cast that you were working with in your characters. I would have to scroll back for pages and find what the name of the place was so I could use it. And that was something that yeah, that's one of those hard learned lessons that you can't avoid, but after you go through it, you're going to learn how to rectify it. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I remember the other thing was you talked about characters take on a life of their own, especially when you thought you had an idea for them and they're like, no, it's going to be this way. I remember specifically one character that I was like, I was writing it. It's an older woman. And I'm like, she's going to be a badass. I'm going to make her a badass for this story. And then writing the chapter she was on, she dies. And I'm like, oh, I guess that's what's happening. Like, I wanted this character to be just basically a badass that you might see in a movie like the grizzled it was in she worked in a police station, so like the grizzled old matronly woman that you would see in like a movie, and the hard ass, and if you wanted something done, she was going to do it right. But when I went to go write it, nope, she died.
Oh my god. Yeah, no, I kill characters that I think readers probably wouldn't expect me to as well.
Yeah,
But you know, it happened to me in a story that is one of is like more of a sci-fi story called Bridget Has Disappeared. The main character is a journalist. His name is Yusuf, and he is telling this story because his wife disappears and reappears and he has no explanation for it. And so when I first started writing this character, I was just, you know, I believed that this character was just telling a story of his love for his wife. But as he started to take shape in the scenes, he really was obsessed with knowing what was going on with her in a way that I had not realized before I started working on the story. He is a journalist, and so he has to know the answer. He can't, it starts to not even be about her or about his love for her. He just
yeah,
has to know what is going on. And that became his drive in the story. And he starts to lose it. And I know a couple of people that I have spoken to have said when they begin that story, they think that he's going to turn abusive, that he's going to start abusing her because he's so singularly focused on knowing what is going on with her and is angry with her and her
yeah.
family for not coming clean about it. Um, and so, yeah, so that is one of my favorite stories, just because of his, you know, his drive and that he just can't let it go, you know. And I think I really identify with that, not
Yeah.
only because of my background in journalism, but just because I think as a creative, we're really curious, and that curiosity sometimes can get the best of us.
And when readers, well, with that character, you don't have to go into details because people need to read it. But were those readers' suspicions right with that character?
No, no, Yusuf is definitely not abusive at all. He does not, no, he definitely does not turn abusive. And I'm actually working with him in a new story now that is not as closely related to that one. But no, he's really a tender guy. He is. He just is so hurt and confused.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, there is, the ending is doesn't answer all the questions, but I think is satisfying enough to know, you know, what is really going on. But you do have to read it to find out.
I only ask that because it's really fun to curb readers' expectations with a story like that. But but they were the ones drawing those conclusions ahead of time. But also, I think that readers appreciate that sort of thing when they get a story that almost they trick themselves into believing one thing, and it's something completely different. So
Yes, yes. And I think, you know, there's a lot of mystery in that story. And so I think the reader starts to identify with him because as you're reading it, you're like, yeah, I kind of need to know this too. I kind of need to know what's going on, you know?
yeah, yeah, that's absolutely part of the fun. All of this is discovering these characters that are living in your head.
Yes.
Um, there's the second part of the plotter and pantser question is there a specific type of subgenre that you tend to write in, and is there a subgenre you haven't tackled yet but you really want to in the future?
I think I want in the future more romance in my stories. I mean, I wouldn't say that I'm a romance. I don't believe in like just kind of stepping off into other people's stuff, but
Yeah,
I tend to one of the things that has come back to me about my work is that there's a lot of like sexiness and romance in there, and so I think I would like to explore that more and what that means in a horror story and how that comes up in a horror story. I tend to tell stories that are speculative, but not all of my horror is speculative. Some of it is just, the horrors of life. But I think, if you ask like what do I tend to take stories that start off pretty mundane, and then I find something otherworldly about them and place that into the story. So that could be something that is, dimension travel, that could be something that is of the occult or a ghost or some body horror that is unexplained. But I think my horror work tends to be speculative.
So you like to um, turn the ordinary into the extraordinary.
Yeah, I tend to find things to be frightened about just in the day to day anyway. Like,
Yeah,
I can be in the house and hear a noise, and then let my imagination go on what that noise could be. Or, even my opening story in the collection, The Turn, looks at the family pet, the dog, and our relationship to dogs, and all of the assumptions that we make about our relationship with dogs and how we project onto them. And what if all of the things that we are projecting onto them or thinking about them is not actually their experience? And what if they decided that they didn't want to remain in this role where they are being dominated by us?
yeah,
And I think that they kind of represent our relationship with the environment and the earth. Um, but it's a pretty mundane thing, right? You're like, you walk past
yeah,
someone with their dog on a leash, or you walk past a bird that's in a cage, and we don't think about that animal's experience of that. And so that's where my work, I think, is where it takes the things that we take for granted in our day to day. So it's not so much mundane just to be mundane. It's mundane because that's my starting point, because I usually want to bring up something that we're not seeing, that I have observed, or a thought that I may have about something. And I think that our, domination of animals is something that we should probably think about. You probably can guess that I'm a plant-based eater. But the story grew out of some of my relationship to animals.
that's a thought-provoking idea. Is basically switching the POV from what we all experience to what the pets or something would experience from their perspective. So yes, that's a very thought-provoking idea.
And I will say, I just blurbed a book, the Black Cat Tales anthology. Francesca Maria is the editor of it. And that anthology is amazing, but it is about black cats. And these animals are maligned, right? And so we have projected all of these, these fears of blackness, fears of the dark, fears of, creatures onto them. And so this anthology is really them having their say. And it blew me away. So when it comes out, and I'm going to have some information about it on my website too, just because I feel like it's a must read for sure.
Yep. So
I'm not in it, by the way. I'm not in it. That's not a promotion for me. I got an advanced copy of it, and I'm so glad that I did, because I think it speaks to so much of what's important to me in horror writing.
that's cool. That's cool. Yeah. I want to just go back really briefly. When you said you would like to explore more of the romance side of things, is that putting it alongside horror, or would you want to branch out outside of horror into romance writing?
Oh, I definitely don't see myself doing that. I don't know if I'm a good enough romance writer to do that. I it had never occurred to me that there was this element within my work until people started to come back and tell me, like Salamander Justice, for instance, when the marketing for that, it's a creature feature. It takes place in Hawaii, and it's this main character, Vita, who's caught in a love triangle with two brothers, and the salamanders are kind of in the background until they're no longer in the background and they start to bring a very terrifying element into the story. But when the marketing began for that, the word sexy kept coming up, and everyone was like, oh, when in the discussions about the book, there was some talk about romance, and I was like, I hadn't, because this is definitely not a happily ever after.
Yeah.
And I didn't, but it made me think there is some element within my stories, even in the Bridget Has Disappeared book, or story, or The Turn, those opening stories to the collection, sex and the relationship, the romance between the main characters is an important feature of the story, and it it creates this connection that they have with the other character that makes the peril that they're in even more frightening to them, because they have this other person. They have this not, they love this person, and they are probably just coming back together because they maybe have broken up, or it's the wife where this is the woman of his dreams, but now there's a problem. And so I think I would like to explore that, like go in to a project where that is top of mind, and not so much of it just kind of being underneath everything, and then the reader picks up on it. I kind of want to go into a project where I'm like, oh, this is going to be like a feature of it, like in the writing of it.
Right. Yep. That makes me question, has there ever been a short work of yours that you have worked on that you have considered either holding off or later on down the road expanding into a longer work? I know you say your sweet spot is based is a short story writer. You enjoy that. But has there ever been a story that you have written or in the process of writing, you're like, this is so much more than this. There's way more to explore here.
I think the Bridget Has Disappeared story, I could definitely keep going on that, just because where it ends, I have so many thoughts on where, what is next.
Yeah.
But what I tend to do is I tend to have characters show up in other things, or I take characters from my short stories and put them
Okay.
in other stories. So, like the closing story in my collection, the main character is also the main character in another short story that I have that will be coming out later this year. And so, and what happened to her in the closing story of the collection is the overarching frustration for her at the beginning of this other short story. So that tends to be, but I feel like there's so many of the short pieces that I have that I could turn into bigger ones. But if there were going to be one that, if someone was like, we really need you to expand, it probably would be the Bridget Has Disappeared story.
That that right there, yes. Like having a literary shared universe. I think um I don't know who we could credit to that, but definitely Stephen King has done that his entire career.
Yes.
So that would be, the prototype probably everyone writing today has watched and um mimicked if that's what they're doing with their writing. That's what I like to do with my writing, and maybe no one would ever catch it unless it is like fans that have followed my writing from the beginning to where it
Right.
is now, because I like to drop little Easter eggs or use a town names, make it basically a continuous world as long as it fits within that world, like the story. I
Yeah.
will drop those little hints and Easter eggs and nuggets for readers to appreciate that will recognize them. But I kind of just do it for myself at the end of the day. But because I'm like, that's thinking I'm clever or something like that. But yes,
Well, I think too because you've built so much there. Like the setting for my novel that's coming out next year is a fictional city
yeah,
that I created based on some of my own experiences. And there are a lot of characters, and there's a hospital, there is the high school, there's the middle school. So there's so many places and so many people that could be shooting off points for a new novel or short story. And one of the characters there is going to end up working at the same paper that the Yusuf, the character from Bridget Has Disappeared, works at, because they're all in the same general area. They're all in Michigan. And so that's where I grew up. And so even though it's a fictional town in Michigan, they're all in the same area. So it's so easy, I think, to return to that because there's depth there. You know it so well.
so you essentially just built an entire community, basically.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
yeah. Um. All right. We have two more questions, and one of them is from our watcher. It's Drew Moyer. He says, "This is my favorite question to ask an author. How old were you when you first tried writing something, and how bad was it?"
That I remember. I wasn't writing when like stories when I was young because my family's storytelling tradition was oral. And so when I was young, and I think that might be true of a lot of people in the African diaspora, that we have a very oral tradition when it comes to storytelling. And so when I was young, my grandmother and my mother, they used to tell me horror stories as like bedtime stories. And so when I used to tell stories, I was often retelling those, or we would try to make up scary stories that we told each other.
Yeah.
The first time that I really started putting my creative ideas on paper was in high school. Really, I had a creative writing instructor who encouraged us to write short stories for his class. And I wrote one. I remember writing one that was about a character who had suffered loss. He had lost a friend to a drunk driving accident. And I remember giving this to the instructor, and he said, "You really have some talent."
Yeah.
And sometimes that's all it takes, because you have to remember, I grew up working class Detroit. There were no writers around me there, and the entertainment work that I had done had all been in front of the camera or had been on stage. And so the idea of sitting down and being a writer had never occurred to me until that moment where I was sitting at his desk and he said, "Hey, you got some talent. I mean, the story was terrible."
Right.
It was a horrible, like he bled all over it with his
Red pen.
pen. um, but I think what he was trying to tell me is that there was some nugget in there of emotion and truth
Yeah.
that came through, even as terribly written as it was. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that, I went to a Catholic school, but it was, working class. It wasn't like an elite private school. And so we didn't have the greatest resources. And so by the time I was in high school, I was figuring a lot of things out on my own. I was figuring out how to write prose on my own. And so the precision in writing, I don't think came until I went to Columbia as an undergrad. And then writing to the ear came when I went to grad school to study journalism. But that first moment, I remember that I think I might have been a sophomore or a junior. And that has lived with me. His name was
Yeah.
Stephen Kersey. That was my creative writing teacher, Stephen Kersey. And he said, "Hey, you got some talent, kid," or something like that. And it just changed everything for me.
That's what I was going to say. It's you never know where people are in their life, and him telling you that you remember it to this day, all these years later. So, um, if you see that in other people, call it out. let them know, because you never know how far down the line, no matter what, it will get to. So
Yes.
that's a
Yes.
perfect example.
Yes.
Um, that was a great question.
That was. Thank you, Drew, for that question.
The last question I would have for you is, what has been the biggest surprise for you after joining the horror community? And that can be writing, reviewing, or otherwise.
The biggest surprise for me, and I have received this question before, and I have the same answer, is how kind everyone is in the horror community. And I still am in awe of that. I believe that because we read horror and we write horror and we have all of that pain on the page and we empathize with the characters, it allows us to be good natured in our day to day interactions with other people. I know it certainly is cathartic for me.
Yeah.
Putting that pain on the page makes it so that I can be my best self when I'm, not writing. And everyone that I have encountered, whether it's through books of horror, the Horror Writers Association, when I'm at StokerCon, my local chapter, everyone has just been good to me. The editors, even the editors that I don't necessarily agree with their contract.
Yeah.
Everyone has just been good, and I know that that's not everyone's experience, but I have been in other places. I've worked as a journalist. I went to Catholic school. I have been in other communities, but it wasn't until I came to the horror community that I felt like no matter what, the people who were around me wished me well. And that's
Yeah.
really saying something.
Yeah. That's generally everybody's answer to that question. But going back to what you said, I think everybody's just out here exercising their demons, whether it's the writing or the reading of the writing. So we're um we're we're not perfect, but pound for pound, I think it's the most loving and welcoming community that I've ever been a part of. So
Yes. And I will say for books of horror, just from the moment that I joined, and like I just read through the recommendations. Like I'm just always on it. It's like the only reason that I'm still on Facebook as regularly is because of this community. And so when you reached out to me, I was like, of course, whatever you need. Like I love the books of horror community. So this has been
I
fantastic.
well, thank you. We try and keep it that way. So that's I mean, we're all just lovers of horror fiction, so try and keep it simply about that.
Have you
Um,
seen Sinners before you go? Have you seen Sinners?
I have not,
Oh my
but
God, go see it.
I keep hearing great things about it.
I've seen
So
it twice already, and I do have plans to go back. And I've been invited onto panels to discuss it. And so, if anyone hasn't seen it, get out there at some point. And I mean, I went this weekend, and I feel like this must have been the third weekend, and the theater was packed on a Saturday night. The theater was packed, and I don't know. I've not seen anything like this recently, so I'm just like,
yeah,
everybody go see it. I mean, I know this is books of horror, so that's kind of
well, it's very few and far in between when I make it to the theater, and one reason was because they had shut down our local theater during COVID,
okay.
but it literally reopened maybe a month or two ago. It's under a new chain. It used to be AMC, and now it's something more local, but it's supposed to be fancier. But we it has the last movie I went and saw in theater was Nosferatu. So,
Oh, okay, okay. Well, yeah, that's good.
but I used to go a lot, but work is terrible. Like,
Mhm.
um, I work overnights and I work like 12-hour shifts overnight.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay.
I'm usually asleep during the day. Um, but getting to the movie theater, I want to say we have a little art house theater that's not too far away from us, and they get some of the older movies. They'll do the older movies, and occasionally we'll go and catch one of the older movies because we I might like from the 80s or early 90s when I wasn't old enough to be going to the theater and catching those movies you grew up loving in the theater finally. That's a really cool thing. But Sinners, I would go see it, especially with people's recommendations. Like I've seen it on Facebook from a lot of folks, and but generally when new movies, they it's not like how it used to be, especially after COVID. So like a month or two after it's out of theaters, it will be on a streaming service, and that's how me and my wife generally watch the newer stuff. So
Okay. Okay. Well, when it
um,
starts streaming,
yes,
check it out.
Sinners,
I'd love to hear what you think about it.
absolutely. But as to the movie part of it, I mean, this is an interview. All bets are off on the interview. So we have that rule in the group. I know everybody
I
hates
know
it, but
it's
we
in the
have
group.
that.
I didn't realize it until I started saying it. So I'm glad it's okay for when we're talking.
Nah, this is your interview, and that's what you want to discuss. So we have that rule in the group because it is a great question to find the books that you like, but so many of the comments, usually the majority, will be, "I love that movie. Oh, that movie is so good." You're not getting book recommendations.
Right.
So
Right.
so it's I don't know. We don't fan those flames. Like some of those posts will stay up longer because one of the admins will peek into the comments, and if the comments are staying on the rails and getting a lot of book recommendations, we'll try and leave it up. But if it starts going off the rails for just movie talk, um, we will we will exit or
Okay.
exit. I mean, but so it's a hit and miss with the movie talking the books of horror because at the end of the day, it's in the name,
Right. Right.
books of horror.
Right.
I mean, but like I said, it's a valid way to try and seek out recommendations for things that you might like, but it just gets too off the rails for
Yes.
those sort of things. Like, and then with the book recommendations and the movies. Um, I forgot where I was going with that. Like there was a very important point to go with that. But yeah, that's the main reason that it's a rule against the group is to keep it simply about the books.
Focused. Yes. Yes.
So
But the African Immortal series by Tananarive Due, I think will capture some of that Sinners audience. So to bring it back to the books.
one thing that I would tell people if they want to push back against that is we are in a book group. Use your words of what you were looking for. So
Right.
just saying like if you were saying like I want a book about that's similar to Sinners. Well, what did you enjoy so much about Sinners? And all you would have to do is say, "Hey, I liked these things, these things, and these things. Please give me your recommendations." That's
Right. Yes.
I mean, we're in a book group, people. We like words.
That's a good point. That's a good
So,
point.
yes. Um so the Tanana Reeve Do series. If anybody that's watching this or listening, if you enjoyed the movie Sinners, it's the African Immortals
African Immortals series.
series.
I think the first one is My Soul to Keep.
My soul to keep. So there you go. There is um Tamika's recommendation of the day.
Yes.
The final part of this is a lot of retreading of what we talked about earlier, but if you have any upcoming events, let the folks know where you can or they can see you.
Yes, I will be on a panel at the Bay Area Book Festival on June 1st. So if you're in the San Francisco Bay Area, come and check us out. That will be up on my website. I have the details for where that is. That's completely free. I will be on a panel at StokerCon, and I have a couple of virtual panels as well that I will put up on my website. That's taking place June 14th, or I think June 12th through the 15th, in Stamford, Connecticut. And I think that's all I can think of right now off the top of my head. But I put it all in my newsletter and on my blog on my website. So tamikathompson.com is where to get all of that information.
Um, Tell people again what the novel you're working on, what it's about, and when they can expect it.
It's coming out March 2026. It's called The Curse of Hester Gardens. It will be published by Erewhon, which is an imprint of Kensington Books. And it's about a mother who lives in a public housing project, and she is dealing with the twin specters of inner city gun violence and speculative curse that has arrived in her home.
All right, that's yes, that's gonna be awesome. It kind of makes, I mean, just a little bit. It makes me think of Candyman. I don't know why.
Yeah, well, because of the public housing project.
I
Because
think so.
we're going back to a
It
movie.
brings. It was a book. It was a
Oh,
short
was
story.
it? Was
It was a
it?
short.
Was there a short story?
It's
Oh,
Clive
okay.
Barker.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right. You're totally right. I don't know why I just had a brain fart. But yes, 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 Candyman. Because it's a public housing project and it's dealing with African American people.
Yeah,
Uh, the criticism, I think, of that is that the curse there, or sort of the entity, is attacking people who are not the original people who were supposed to be attacked, right?
yeah.
Uh, they're not the bad guys, and so yeah, so I'm sort of in a similar terrain, so that's probably why it made you think of that.
Similar setting for sure.
Yes, yes.
I cannot remember the name of the short story. I'm gonna butcher it. I think it's the Unforgotten, that's the name of the Candyman short story. It's like the Unforgotten or
Yeah,
something
you
like.
know what? I read it. I read it.
I've read it too.
I don't know. Yeah, I think because the movie came out in 2021, and I think in my mind it has kind of got the remake. I think it has kind of gotten a bit divorced from the original story, but that is exactly right. It is Clive Barker.
Yeah. Um, Last but not least, tell everyone the socials they can find you at. Drop your website, drop your newsletter, and everything like that.
Okay, so it's tamikathompson.com is my website. It has the newsletter sign up on there. I also have a blog on there called Tamika Talks Terror. And I'm on all of the major socials. I'm on Facebook. I have an author page. I'm on Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, TikTok. What am I missing? X, but we don't really, I mean, that's just,
Yeah.
we'll pretend like that's not really there.
What a
And I'm
dumpster
also
fire.
on Slasher. I don't know if any of you guys are on Slasher. I'm on Slasher. I've had an account on there for a while, and they're more focused on. They have book recommendations on there, but most of the people that I follow talk about movies.
Yeah.
But slasher.tv, I have a profile on there as well. So if you're on there, look for me there. And I share all of my book updates. Anything I share on my other social, I share on Slasher too. I really love their platform.
I remember it when it came out. I don't think I might have been on there early on, but it's very hard. Like basically Facebook is my chosen platform, because of the groups and stuff and the friends I've made here. Um, I will do Instagram because it's so closely attached to Facebook, owned by, and then everything else is just so severely neglected. Like it just, I don't know how I get out of bed every day thinking about all the social medias just thirsting for my attention.
Well, I've been on social media for a while because back when I worked as a journalist, one of the TV shows that I worked for, I was their web producer and I also did their social media. So I was one of the first people on a lot of the platforms because of that work.
So you
But
know
some
how to
newer
navigate.
platforms, I'm like TikTok, like I still am just getting up and running on it and figuring out how it works. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that it's neglected. It's just me trying to figure out like what to do on it.
Yeah.
So I hope to give that one a little more love and attention as time goes on.
Yeah, like I know you can do the lives and stuff on TikTok. I use it basically essentially for book trailers. That's what I use TikTok for, to make
Okay.
book trailers and stuff. And um then I go and share them to Instagram from TikTok.
Right. Right.
So a
Yeah.
little bit, you can get a little bit of cross pollination there, and that's probably the best use of your time is if you can do something that will cross pollinate against multiple
You know,
places.
I hear that and I feel like each platform, and this might be because I came on them early, a lot of them, I feel like they each have their own vibe and their own purpose and their own culture. And
Yeah,
so whenever I get that button on there that's like share to, like, and it lists all the things, like I feel like I have to recraft something for each one. So that might be the reason that I feel like it's all become stressful or like difficult for me to really
yeah.
get my messages out because I'm trying to tailor it to each community because I do feel like it's different.
I think if
Uh,
you do it that way, it does feel more natural. And then if you're doing it like the cross pollination way, it's a little bit more soulless, but
yes.
because it's just like a blanket sharing. But um, you're probably doing it right.
I don't know. We'll see.
But I had a guest join me.
Yeah, I was gonna ask who is the guest.
This is what this is Sid. My wife calls him Sid because he's kind of the devil half the time. So Sid Vicious, and I call him Mister because we used to have a cat that died named Mister, and this one it's almost like a spinning image of that cat, like
Oh,
acts in the
okay.
same mannerisms and stuff. I can see him being goofy and stuff like that. That's what Mister. I have a few book covers that are modeled after that cat that died. So this one is very similar
Do
in
you feel
mannerisms.
like the original Mister is in there somewhere in the new?
That's what it feels like too. Yeah, like,
Movie?
but
There's
I
a
think,
short story in there.
well, I that's the books that those short, very short, it's essentially short stories that I write featuring the cat, and it's Mr. Fluffy Butt, and Mr. Fluffy Butt is Mister. So it's it's just a silly idea, and that type of writing when I do those is like cathartic and palate cleansing because I don't have any rules for myself when I do write those, and the idea essentially came from um, the title of the story is "Devil on My Shoulder." Who
Mhm.
would be the devil on the devil's shoulder? It would be his pet cat that only he could see and talk to,
Mr. Fluffy Butt. That's what
Mr.
it's called.
Fluffy Butt.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna have to.
Well, Devil on My Shoulder, and then the second one is called Mr. Fluffy Butt Saves the World.
I love that title.
But
Okay.
I had one of the artists here in the Books of Horror community did the artwork for it, and she absolutely did amazing. Like I sent her a reference photo of Mister, and she captured him perfectly. So like
Okay. I
that
love
was
when that happens, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's always such a good feeling.
yeah. So um, it's been awesome getting to know you and talk to you.
Yes, thank you so much for
interviewing you.
having me. This has been fantastic. I'm appreciative of everyone who joined and asked such amazing questions. I'm appreciative of your questions. Your questions were amazing as well. This was fantastic.
Yep, I felt like I didn't even need the questions because of the conversation. It was perfect the way we flowed in and out of what I was going to ask anyway. So um,
Good. That's great when that
that makes
happens.
it very easy on me. So,
Right.
but
Thank you.
when your new book comes out in March of next year, you're more than welcome to come on again and talk about that all you want to.
I would love to come back and talk about that. I would
Yep,
love to. Oh my goodness, I have so much to say on that topic. So, but we'll save that for next time.
absolutely. I will gladly have you on again.
Thank you.
Um, everybody who is still watching, or didn't get to watch, well, I wouldn't tell you at the end of this. I will have this uploaded on YouTube at some point in probably by the end of this month. So, um, that will be something you can point people to more widely than just being in the group. So, like people
Okay.
that's not on Facebook, I know a lot of people left Facebook too. So
Yes.
that will give them the opportunity to see the interviews that I've been doing on a wider platform. So that's another social media, YouTube.
I
So
know.
I'm just barely getting into that one, and it's been around probably the longest next to Facebook,
Yes.
YouTube. But
Yes.
um, absolutely, thank you, Tamika, and I
Thank you.
hope you have a wonderful day. And thank you to everyone who tuned in and brought their questions or comments and just had a great time with this. So I
Thank you.
appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.